Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahabushai, Bahasham, Rakahak Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure unto the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video. And in this video, I'll be profiling this clip from Redacted's YouTube channel titled, Here's How Putin Will Respond to a NATO Attack. And, I'm just going to hit some, key points in this video, just to show that this whole, NATO EU system that the U.S. is a part of and really at the head of is fractured. And at some point during World War III, America's own allies are going to turn against her. And it's all a part of biblical prophecy. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Well, NATO may be a few short steps away from a war with Russia. It certainly seems like that's what they want. Overnight, Russian President Putin asked Joe Biden to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. Putin also announced that Russia has the right to start supplying weapons to other countries and regions where the attacks will be carried out on sensitive targets in countries like Ukraine, countries where the U.S. may have illegal bases. Perhaps Syria comes to mind. Is this a descent into full-on war, or is it a possibility of nuclear war? Well, our next guest says that if Russia is attacked, they will respond with a massively destructive attack on Kiev, and he lines out the sequence of events. Gilbert Doctorow is the author of many books on Russia-U.S. relations, has been warning about this for decades. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
So you, in your most recent Substack, you lay out what you think will be Russia's response, and it goes something like this. Kiev, Poland, then military factories and bases in Germany, the UK, and France. And then in the end, spoiler alert, you say, but the U.S. will not come to their aid and honor its Article 5 obligation under the NATO treaty. So the U.S. then is sort of escalating with no intent to actually show up, which is so interesting. Can you talk to this?
And hey, that's always been the MO of the United States of America in regards to her European allies. America starts all these foreign wars and, economic sanctions. And who are the ones that usually feel the blowback from those actions? These countries in Western Europe. Look at the wars in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, your Syrian civil war, the Libyan civil war. With those refugee crises that came from those conflicts, where did the majority of those refugees go? Europe. And then with this, Western war against Russia over Ukraine and the use of sanctions on Russia, who felt the main blowback from that? Who is the nation that relied more economically with natural gas, oil, and other resources, from Russia? These European nations, instead of these, the United States of America. And hey, while things may seem peachy on the surface, a lot of these European allies of the U.S. are starting to look sideways at the U.S. and see that, hey, we're nothing more than puppets of the United States of America. And what it's ultimately going to culminate into is, like I just said, at some point during World War III, America's own allies are going to turn against her and ally themselves with America's enemies like Russia, and they're going to shoot nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. And, there was a quote from that supreme devil, Henry Kissinger, where he said, how'd it go? I think he said to be a friend, to be an ally of America is dangerous, but to be a friend of the United States of America is deadly. And just look at, Afghanistan or Vietnam. The U.S. fomented those wars and raised up those puppet governments. But then when, the war was turning south for the U.S., they no longer had the means to continue that war. They pulled out and left those governments they set up to those forces they were fighting against, and those governments collapsed very quickly. But this is Daniel chapter 7. I'm going to read verses 19 to 20. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, those legs of iron in Daniel chapter 2, the ancient pagan Edomite Roman Empire, which was diverse from all the others because they had what? A Senate house and, senators in it, and political parties, much like the United States of America today, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. Verse 20, and the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up. And now we're going into, the last leg of the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 2. Those iron toes mixed with miry clay, which is this current NATO EU system that the U.S. is a part of and at the head of. And it all began with Esau coming back into power during what? The Renaissance or the rebirth. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, and that other which came up is speaking of the United States of America, beginning with what? The 13 colonies. And the 3 that fell were the major players in, the Americas before the U.S., became the dominant power here. The British, the French, and Spain, who the U.S., had issues with. Even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things. And just look at what the United States of America pushes onto the rest of the world. Demonocracy, capitalism, feminism, the alphabet lifestyle beginning with LG, this whole scientific method way of looking at things. This is a antichrist, demonic nation whose look was more stout than his fellows. And that word stout goes into great, proud, powerful, which what did Natalie Morse just say, when she was reading that Edomite's report, that whatever happens, he speculates that the U.S. won't come to the aid of these European nations. And hey, like I was saying earlier, whenever the U.S. starts these wars or these economic sanctions or anything like that, it's always these European allied nations in the West that feel the main blowback from it, because the U.S. uses them as it sees fit, as a means to an end. But now let's go back to this clip, and I'm going to jump to the 11-minute and 41-second mark.
Putin is not a gambling man. So what would he do?
Can I ask you about that then? Because what you're saying is that he is facing criticisms for bluffing from even his own allies. But if we look at it from the other side, does it then seem like the United States is also bluffing, but sort of asking its friends to escalate, meaning European countries, on its behalf with no intention of standing behind them?
Whose look was more stout, more great, more proud than his fellows. And we really saw that during Donald Trump's presidency, when he was calling on those European nations to, foot their end of the bill of keeping NATO running. And, Trump just recently said, if Europe doesn't pay her bills, hey, we'll let Russia do whatever they want to them.
Yes, but I wouldn't use the word bluffing.
Okay.
Because I don't think anybody in Washington will admit what we're talking about. That when push comes to shove, the United States has no problems with Kiev being taken off the face of the earth by the
Right.
Russians.
What you say here, actually, I want to highlight this so that I read.
Hey, that Henry Kissinger quote, to be an ally of America is dangerous, but to be a friend, which we can see Ukraine trying to be a friend with the U.S., is deadly.
See it for themselves and seek it out, is that this will not lead to nuclear war because Europe and the U.S. do not give a damn about Ukrainian lives. So the cost of a Russian strike would be nil. So please continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted you with your own words.
Well, that is with respect to Kiev. But where I'm going beyond that and into rather dangerous territory for the audience's understanding of who we are and who they are, is to say that the United States doesn't give a damn about Europe. This is not a bluff. It's simply, and that, as I am finding as I look around and attend some high-level luncheons
Listen to what this Edomite's about to say very closely.
by Belgian elites who are meeting with Belgian military personnel who are saying that they no longer believe in what was the third strike or the third element of the nation's defense, that the cavalry would come to its aid, the cavalry being the United States. They no longer believe that. And so this is the area where we are.
And those Edomites in Belgium don't think that the U.S. would, come to their aid in the event of, major escalations with Russia. So that's showing, a fracturing within this system. And what did Yahushua, the Son of the Most High, say in Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25? And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And this kingdom of the iron toes mixed with miry clay, this NATO EU system that the U.S. is a part of, is divided on many issues. You've got some Edomites that still want to, do business with Russia and not foment a war against them, while you've got others that are full on board with going to war against Russia, calling up drafts, sending troops, the whole 9 yards. And the house, the race of Esau, Edom, is divided. You've got these European Edomites, like those in Belgium, those Edomites like those in Hungary, looking at the U.S. is like, look, you're just doing all this stuff that's only going to benefit you, but throw us under the bus. And we're really questioning if you're going to come to our aid. And as it says, a kingdom and a house divided against itself cannot stand. This whole entire rulership of Esau Edoms is about to come to an end. World War III and nuclear destruction, that's going to be the final nail in the coffin of Esau Edom's rulership. But since I've been quoting it, let's go to Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 40, dealing with that dream that King Nebuchadnezzar of the Neo-Babylonian Empire had of that statue of a man made of different metals, which represented the different heathen kingdoms that would be ruling before, the kingdom of heaven was established under the children of Israel. The children of Israel, known today as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But this is Daniel chapter 2, verse 40, and they have a header on the top, which reads what? Rome. And the fourth kingdom, that same fourth kingdom that we read about in Daniel chapter 7, shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Verse 41, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, the last leg of the fourth beast, the reincarnated Roman Empire, the NATO EU system that the U.S. is a part of. Salakia, hold on a second. Salakia, just give me a few seconds. Khan. Okay, this is Daniel chapter 2, verse 41 again. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And again, if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And that clay and iron can go into the iron being the strong military part of this system, NATO, and the clay can go into, the weaker economic part, the EU or European Union, which, Belgium is a member of both NATO and the EU. And it can also go into the stronger, countries within this system, like the U.S., which is a part of NATO, France, Germany, the UK, and the weaker part being your nations that are referred to as the pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. But as it said, the kingdom shall be divided. And as that Edomite just said in that redacted clip, you've got a lot of high, level Belgium, officials and members in the military thinking that if and when things escalate between, the West and Russia, that the U.S. isn't going to come to their aid. And you've got a bunch of other European nations looking at the U.S. sideways, really starting to analyze their relationship that they have with, America. But there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay. Verse 42, and as the toes were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And we are coming into the times to where this entire system is going to be completely broken, divided, and fall. But let's go back to this clip and play the last, bit of it.
Today, that I'm saying that Europeans don't give a damn about Kiev, that Europeans don't give a damn about Poland because Poland is on the line. I don't think anybody in Belgium or Germany will lift a finger if the Russians strike against Poland. Article 5 or no Article 5. Article 5 does not.
And outside of just America, as that Edomite just said, there are divisions between these European nations within the system on whether they're going to help each other or not. A house being divided cannot stand.
Require member states to take a specific action. It is a format for them to take that action. But nobody is going to impose a penalty on those who don't. So these countries will not defend one another, and the United States will not defend Europe. I cannot imagine Mr. Biden or anybody else in power in the White House sacrificing New York, Los Angeles, Miami as a retaliation against the loss of London.
Right. Yeah.
But the irony in that is that's what's ultimately going to happen, not just by nations like Russia or China shooting nukes on the U.S., but America's own European allies that also have nuclear arms betraying them and shooting missiles on the place like New York, Miami, Los Angeles, these other great cities in the United States of America. But to say with this clip, now I'm going to go to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, which is really only one chapter, verse 1, and then jump down to verse 7. And the header reads, Edom will be humbled. And this entire book is dedicated to the judgment and downfall of you Edomites, or so-called white people. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, or your allies, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. At some point during World War III, America's Confederates, her allies that have been at peace with her right now, going along with the sanctions and sending, military aid to Ukraine, as well as going on along with America and her other foreign wars and economic sanctions, eventually deceiving her, turning against her, and prevailing against her, betraying her completely. They that eat thy bread, receiving all this money, and funding and military weaponry have laid a wound under thee, they're going to turn and use those very same weapons on the United States. There is none understanding in him. And like I've been saying all throughout the video, what this is ultimately going to culminate into is the nuclear destruction of the United States of America. But I'm going to close it out in Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns referring to the EU or European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU, back when it was known as the European Economic Community. And I believe it was something called the Treaty of Rome back in the 50s that put this whole thing into motion, which thou sawest upon the beast, NATO, these shall hate the whore that rides upon the beast, that's called Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, at the beginning of this chapter, the United States of America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire, from those 200 million nuclear missiles, which are going to hit this place and turn it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.